outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for our 10 minutes of morning calm as we look at some of the prophecies around the Advent season and the prophetic imagination, as Walter Brueggemann famously called it. And I love that idea of the prophetic imagination. You know, these prophecies, it's not, I mean, boy, we treat prophetic stuff like so darkly, you know, like bad movies. And yet prophetic imagination is about God saying, like, look at what I'm doing, and let's have an awareness around it. Let's have imagination around it. And that's what we're looking at today. You know, how can that imagination look? And yeah, and a beautiful little take on that. That's interesting. And again, we might miss it with our modern ears, but I'm going to try to share with you about it through more ancient ears here. And that's this beautiful prophecy. And this is from the Gospel of Matthew. So this is John the Baptist talking in a very prophetic way about Advent, about the season of Advent, about Jesus' coming. He says, "It will be the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." So the voice of one crying in the wilderness is a very, in my line of work, you know, you hear you hear that phrase a lot, even though you may have just heard it for the first time now. And it's that prophetic idea of when God starts to work in our life, that really will be like this voice coming out of the wilderness. And it's interesting with the wilderness. Like, obviously there's a sort of a very immediate response to anything. The wilderness was the desert then, and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm in a wilderness time of my life. I'm in a desert time of my life. I'm in a time where there's no flourishing. And that's true, and actually that preaches really well, because frankly that's where a lot of people really find a connection with God, is in those moments. And there's also a subtler piece to the idea of the wilderness here, and that's this bit with the wilderness. You think about the history of the Jewish people, and again, this was written for a Jewish audience. They historically, they'd come out of Egypt. They had spent 40 years in the wilderness, wandering in the wilderness, as it's often referred to, and then they came into the promised land. So this wilderness time period was really their crucible, which I find really interesting. Think of the wilderness as a crucible. A wilderness is what holds this heating and these changes that take place. And I think that there's a part too, folks, where we can look back, you know, and that call to the wilderness. It's that call, and this is really hard to explain. You know, I have it in my head, but it's hard to get words around it. You know, that wilderness time period, I think, can sort of be this call back to the rich work in these very thin times. You know, where it's a historical reference here, and it's a memory, as it were. And we all have memories of those times that were really challenging, and somehow we made it through. Really challenging, and somehow we made it through. That's a big call at Advent season too. And it's not kind of like a glib, like, you know, everything's fine, nothing to see here. You know, it's not that. I think wilderness is a very rich time. It's a time filled with a lot of challenges. It's a time filled with a lot of battle. It's a time with a lot of darkness, and times when resources are scarce. But it's also a time where we just kind of, in that descent into that wilderness time, into that descent into the crucible, we learn a very different trust of God. It's trust of God doesn't show up, at least for me, when things are going really well. Trust, and it's a begrudging trust, but it's a much deeper trust, sort of shows up when, in those crucible moments, when things have really come down, and it's a crucible moment. It's a wilderness time, and somehow we make it through. Now, we don't make it through unscarred. We don't make it through unwounded. Of course, we carry all that with us, but there's a richness. You know, there's a richness to it. You know, and I was thinking about, you know, what would I use as an example for this? And I was thinking about my dad this morning. And you know, my dad was born right before the Great Depression hit, and got really bad for his family actually at the late 30s, right before World War II. And it got so bad that his family could no longer afford to have him at home. So they gave him away, sent him to live with cousins here in Philadelphia. My family's from Pittsburgh. And there's something about that. Like my dad has always had this incredible, incredible ability to just be like, yep, we'll figure it out. Yep, we'll figure it out. Yep, we'll figure it out. And I have seen him face some like crazy stuff, just things that would leave me quivering in fright in a corner. And he's just got this sort of this optimism, this overwrought optimism. And it's beautiful actually, of like, yep, we'll just figure it out. And because it's what his family did. They went through a wilderness time, and which was the Great Depression, and they figured it out. And there's part of Advent that calls us to that kind of thinking, that calls us back to that kind of thinking. So not this kind of thing may not fit for everyone. You may be in a time period of life where like the idea of the wilderness is a million miles away, but you might be dialing in today and be like, yeah, that's exactly where I am. And can you learn those lessons, like thinking about where you were, how you've made it through those places before, how God has held you in those places before, and how we can keep on moving forward, how that is part of Jesus's birth in our life, which is really fascinating to me, because it's not found in all the glitz. It's found in this wilderness time period. So that's my thought for today, folks. May you find God in a little bit of that wilderness, and maybe get a chance to share with someone too. What's when I say that time period, like what did you learn the last time you were there? And hopefully, you can think about the good lessons from those challenges. I'm certainly going to try to do that today as well. So that's my thought on this particular Advent prophecy, folks. And what we're going to do now is now we're going to listen to a bell here. It's a little meditation bell, and what we're going to do is we're just going to have a little moment of stillness. So what you do is just listen to the bell. Listen to the bell until it stops ringing. When it stops ringing, you'll hear me repeat some scripture. It's just a chance for us just to relax our minds. Then after that, we're going to do a little prayer and then a little blessing. And today I remembered my phone. So you can offer comments on New Church Live's Facebook page. And again, people comment all throughout the day. Yesterday we had somebody, the past couple of days, we've had Martha commenting from out in Alaska, which is like super fun. So anytime of day you want to comment, please do. Love to hear from people, and we'll respond right back. So with that, folks, let's get a big breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and bring you peace and bring you home. Amen. All right, friends. So you can go ahead and throw a comment up on New Church Live's Facebook page. It'll take me a minute here to scroll on up. And again, any time of day, from any place, with any thought you might have, I love hearing from folks. It's one of the real magical parts of this little morning thing that we do. I see we got a lot of people on this morning, so let me just mute myself so I'm not hearing myself talk as I'm talking. All right, Liz, great to see you joining us this morning. Good morning, Liz. Marcus, always good to see you, buddy. And again, not to belabor the point, but to belabor the point, I love that picture of the boys with Advent. Sherry, yeah, happy Thursday. I don't know why I've always loved Thursdays, but it's my favorite day of the week. Gwenda, good morning to you. And I'm going to work on that little response that I want to email out to you. Just haven't had time to put it together yet, but it's on its way. Maria, good morning to you, my friend. And again, great to have you at our Tuesday group. And I am getting out, Maria, Maria was in a group with a couple from South Dakota who happened to be in the Philadelphia area today visiting family, and I'm about to go out to breakfast with them, Maria, which will be super fun. Sherry, leads to a good end, and that's really important. It's a key part of thanks for sharing that there, Sherry. That's a key part of New Church theology, that God is always trying to pull towards a good end, as best he can given the circumstances of our life. Carl writes, good morning. Yep, we'll figure it out. Such an important attitude and life lesson. Great thought for the day and every day. Yeah, and may you all have a friend who does that. Mine is Stephen Bochnick, and Steve and I were out to lunch yesterday, and Stephen's always like, figure it out. We'll figure it out. Gene writes, peace has within it trust in the Lord. Good to remember when wandering in the wilderness. Yeah, and that deep trust and faith are pretty much the same word most of the time as they're used biblically, by the way. Linda writes, thank you. If everyone comes out of the wilderness with peace and hope. And it's amazing how many people do. Linda, that's a great point. I really get sort of stunned by that. I mean, my dad is the most upbeat person in the world. And, again, his family couldn't feed him. How crazy is that? Yeah, that great reminder. God is God. I'm not God, which is always important to remember as well. And a little shout out there to Anne as well, and to Susan. So again, I know we have more comments than what I read there, and I'll get to them because I know all of them show up on my phone. But just wishing you folks all the very best. And yeah, here's to the wilderness, and here's to finding a little beauty there. Take care, friends. God bless. Have a great day.